Hi, welcome to another episode of Expert Experts. Today we've got Majdel Musa. She is a director at the moment of operations and legal at Real Trust Conveyancing and Escrow Services. She's been in the UAE for around 10 years. She started off in the land department. She is also a trainer and teaches real estate broker licenses, so RERA in Dubai and ADREC in Abu Dhabi. So she is the person to go to for training. She also provides training on anti-money laundering, which is AML for the UAE real estate sector, and she is a specialist in what she does. And she's also on the advisory board. She's an advisory board member for Baytukum, which is formerly Baytuki, and she is the pioneering real estate crowdfunding platform in the UAE. So we've got her on today. We want to find out a lot more about real estate. It is a very vast subject, so we've tailored some questions for her. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
First question for you, Majdel. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience here in the UAE. You've been here for a while. You've seen the market change. What are the current trends at the moment, especially for, like, for example, expats looking to rent or buy?
Well, as we all know, the real estate market has been crazy for the past few years, and especially this year, there's no difference in that. And in fact, last week they just announced that the number of sales transactions crossed over 20,000 just the month of October, which is
just
a record.
1 month.
Yes.
Wow.
So that was record breaking. So it's the market is still
booming,
on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, correct. And we've actually seen reports that said that UAE will be getting the most number of millionaires of any country.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
6,700. So
I've heard a lot of millionaires are moving here. Did you see something?
I did, yeah.
Yes, so a lot of people coming. So the luxury market is also still moving forward very quickly. And actually something new that I've noticed recently is that now the North American investors are being pursued by the developers and the brokerages, which I feel I've been here now more than 10 years. And I felt that the Americans and Canadians were being pretty much ignored by the real estate market.
Just to stop you, I forgot to tell the listeners as well that Majdel's actually an American attorney as well. So she doesn't obviously practice here, but she was it commercial that you did?
Yeah, so I did real estate and
commercial. And then you come here and become just got into kind of real estate. But yeah, she's an attorney like us.
Yes. So it's now they're pursuing all of the developers are doing roadshows in the US and
yeah, you told me about that last time. So has that kind of kicked off?
Oh, for sure. Actually, I just talked to a broker who did a roadshow in the US this weekend, and she said that the Americans are coming. They bought like crazy.
It's like the British and the Europeans. Everybody wants to kind of buy, which is great.
And we'll see now, because today is election day in the US. So let's see after the election.
That's like a big trend,
Maybe more people will try to escape.
Yeah. So with all these expats and influx of everyone coming over to Dubai, what sort of, from your experience and in your view, would be a good sort of legal consideration for expats when they're looking at investing, and maybe touching on due diligence as well and what they can be doing when they're looking at investing?
Yeah, due diligence is actually a topic that's not talked about enough.
It's true.
Nobody really talks about it, especially the brokers.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of ways to do your due diligence as an investor, even on either the Dubai Land Department's website or the REST app. So they have an official app called Dubai REST, and that stands for Real Estate Self-Transaction. So it's for all of the stakeholders in the market. So landlords, tenants, the buyers, sellers, the developers,
so
the
all
brokers,
kind of checks done on this platform then?
Yes,
which is
all
good.
sorts of things, all sorts of things. So first thing they can do is obviously check if their brokers are RERA licensed. They can also look up the ranking of the brokers. So they have a ranking system for brokers. They have a ranking system for the brokerages as well. And then, of course, if they're buying off-plan, there are a lot of laws surrounding the off-plan purchases here in Dubai. And they can look up and make sure that the developer is registered with RERA, the project is registered with RERA, and of course the most important thing is the escrow account, because
so there's a lot of checks they can do.
You can do that. You can look it up. You can go and see what percentage of completion the project is at. You can even
this has probably changed a lot over the last 10 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always the laws have been there. They've been in place for quite a number of years now, but they've also changed over time in recent years. Yes, so then also there are tons of other things they can do. So they can look up, they can verify the title deed on Dubai Rest app. And even more important is that if they go to, there's a feature on Dubai Rest called property status. And if they go and put the title deed information there, they will see whether or not there are any blocks by either Dubai courts, by the land department, or by the rental dispute center. So if it's the rental dispute center, it may be that there are unpaid service charges.
Oh gosh.
Because the rental dispute center recently got jurisdiction over unpaid service charge claims. So that could be something, and that's super important to look up. So I actually got a call from somebody recently that, because people message me on social media all the time, can I talk to you for a minute about my issue? And he was purchasing a property, and he applied for a mortgage and even signed the final offer letter. And then the seller was unable to pay his service charges. So he paid them off for him. So he paid over 21,000 dirhams in service charges on behalf of the seller.
Okay.
They go to do the transfer, and the registration trustee says, can't do anything because there's a block by Dubai courts.
Oh gosh.
So now he's stuck in this mortgage.
And he's paid that
And he's
much.
paid the 21,000.
So yeah, my question was going to be, does this happen often? Are there sort of
Oh my God.
these kind of checks that perhaps the brokers maybe aren't necessarily being completely upfront about in terms of potential buyers? Like, is this a real issue that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we see this every once in a while, not necessarily
To
always
this extent.
to this extent, but yes, there are things that come up that could have been resolved if either the broker did their due diligence or if there was a conveyancer on the deal, for example, looking this up. And it's not necessarily that the brokers are hiding it or lying, because they have no reason to do it if they know it's not going to close, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the
The
fact
people
that
get
they don't know.
missed.
Yeah, no, that's quite sad as well.
Yeah.
So when it comes to financing for someone that's looking to buy in Dubai, so an expat, what's their options for an expat compared to a local? Is it harder? Is it trickier? Or is it quite? Is there quite a lot of options now?
So there are a lot of options, and the documentation is pretty much the same. But yes, the loan to value that they will get will depend on whether they are a UAE national or a non-UAE national. So for non-UAE nationals, the maximum that they can get is 80% loan to value, meaning they'll have to bring 20% down, and that is for properties that are under 5 million dirhams in value. And then for properties over 5 million, it will be up to 70%. So they're going to have to come with at least 20 to 30%. And then for Emiratis, it goes up to 85% for under 5 million, and then up to 75%. So as you see, there's always a 5% difference between UAE nationals and non-UAE nationals.
That's really interesting to know.
So I had a question in terms of the rental market. So for example, if expats were coming over to Dubai and they were looking at renting in the first instance, what are some key sort of considerations that they should look at before signing a lease? What are the sort of issues that might crop up if they're not too careful?
Yeah, so I mean, there are all sorts of issues. We could go for hours about just the tenancy laws.
All the time.
Yes. Tenancy laws, we can go on and on and on. But I'm going to just point out a few key things to remember.
Because most people that come here first always rent. It's quite important.
Exactly. So yeah, it's very important to know the basics, at least, of the tenancy laws. Yeah. So first thing is that you do have to register the lease on Ijari. This is the rental system here in Dubai through the land department. So it has to be registered in order to be able to file a dispute. So that's whether you're a landlord or a tenant and you have a case against the other party, you've got to have the Ijari. So that's the first thing to be aware of.
Step
There's
one.
some story.
It's done. I'm good.
Yes, good. And then the second thing I would say is that you have to be aware of the rental increase caps. So in Dubai, all of Dubai is covered by this except for DIFC. They have their own laws. And there is a limit between 0 to 20% that the landlord can increase the rent every year. And that will depend on the average similar rent for the same number of bedrooms in the same area in which your
So they go up
lease
to 20%.
Yes, so it depends. So you have to go and look, every time you get a rental increase notice as a tenant, go and look on the rental calculator on the Dubai Rest app. whether or not the landlord is entitled to that increase. You can even print out a PDF and send it to the landlord and say, you know, you're asking for 10%, but land department saying you can get 0% or whatever it might be.
Okay.
So you can go on, I would say you must go on and do that right away.
So you can get that information
Yes.
and use it.
Yes, and then remember that landlord has to give you the notice at least 90 days in advance.
Okay.
So even if they miss it by 1 day, they give you notice at 89 days, there's no increase for that year. So very important for landlords to time it correctly.
Yeah, interesting.
And then also the fact that the leases are, the tenant has an automatic right to renewal of the lease. So they will, unless you have a reason to evict the tenant, they cannot be evicted. So they can be evicted for non-payment of the rent, obviously. That's with a 30-day notice. But if they pay during that 30 days, they get to stay. And also for breach of the lease terms, that's also a 30-day notice. And then the 4 reasons that we have for eviction with a 1-year notice is for the sale of the property. So that's the landlord just having the desire to sell the property. For personal use, and that's only for the landlord, him or herself, or a direct relative, so first degree. So kids, the parents, the spouse, that's about it. And then they also have to prove if they're using it for personal use, they have no other properties in Dubai that they can use it for. And then if they do evict for personal use, they are not allowed to re-rent for another 2 years.
It's quite strict.
Yeah, it's quite
And then the last 2 reasons are, so either major reconstruction of the property or complete demolition, and you have to have a technical report from the municipality stating that it needs to be done. So it's not
quite
just
stringent.
it's very, and then the notice has to be given by notary public. So the law actually says it can be given by notary or by registered mail, but for a very long time now, rental dispute center judges have said the only sufficient notice is by notary.
through the notary.
Okay.
No, that's really good to know. So there's quite a lot of essential tips, I think, that people, especially expats, because there's loads that are moving here and are already here that need to know. So the other thing, Majdel, that we wanted to ask you is about cultural factors. Do they actually influence any preferences and needs of expats in the Dubai real estate market? Or is that not a thing?
No, actually, somewhat. Actually, to a certain extent, yes. So, I mean, most people will consider where to live based on their lifestyle, right? If they have pets, for example, they want a pet-friendly community. If they have kids, they probably want a playground and pools and things like that. But also, there is a cultural consideration. So, for example, with South Asians or the Desi community, as you know, Samara, there's a preference for closed kitchens for obvious reasons, because you're cooking with curries, even with Arabs too, for example, because there are onions and garlic and all sorts of things, and people don't want the smell going through the house. So they prefer to have closed kitchens. So yes, sometimes that happens. And with other Arabs that are...
See, I never thought of that.
Yeah. Even with other Arabs that are not necessarily Emiratis, and sometimes even the Desis, they prefer living or renting in the GCC only community. So they can't purchase there, but they prefer to rent there. Why? Because the properties, the villas are big, and the walls are high. They have a lot of privacy and security. And they have a majlis, that's a separate area for men to sit in.
Someone said that to me, because some people prefer that, having a separate area.
Yeah, so they like having that
The women and men
separateness. And
separate,
sometimes the kitchens are even disconnected. They're a
Well,
separate
my
building.
parents and my in-laws still have that. They have, the women are here, the men are over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the separate kitchens sometimes, so that they don't even come close to having the smells throughout the house.
So
It
it
really
does have
depends.
some kind of
Yeah,
influence.
no, they're interesting points. I had a question in terms of, so we've touched on sort of some of the rental considerations that are important for expats moving over. Are there any other, you've been here for a while now, so are there any other tips or any other pieces of advice you could give to people looking to move to Dubai, expats looking at living here sort of for the first time?
Yeah, I would definitely, like we said earlier, rent for the first year at least, so that you figure out where you really want to be. Because just seeing something online or coming for a couple of days and driving around and saying, oh, I like this area, you don't actually know until
You need to get a feel for it.
you're really here and you see it up close and personal. So definitely rent the first year at least, drive around to different communities, see what you like, and then figure out what are your priorities. Do you need to be close to your work? Do you need to be closer to the kids' schools, etc.? And something that my husband and I did when we were deciding where to live, we would join Facebook groups of the different communities we were considering.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, because
that's
then
a really good idea.
you get to see who the neighbors are, what the activities are, and what their complaints are, which is super important.
Really
I've not heard of that. That's such a good idea.
So it's good for our listeners because lots of people will rent and after a bit they're like, we want to move, but which area is best for us? And I think that's really
great
useful.
tip.
Yeah, so
you get to snoop on their gossip.
No, that is
I know
super
lots
important.
of I know lots of mums that are on like British Mums Dubai and British Mums Abu Dhabi, and they've said that they got lots of useful tips on there for schools and communities as well. So I know they've shared that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really good idea.
That's a good
to
idea.
get on
Yeah.
there.
So when you did that, you kind of knew from there where you wanted to be.
Yeah, so if we saw a lot of complaints, especially about the management of the community and the, the repairs and the problems and this and that,
Then you kind of know.
then you say, okay, you know
Steer
what,
clear.
let's not do that.
Yeah,
Let's not
of
go
course,
there.
that's such a good tip. I might use that myself.
So now the role that you're in, because you've had quite a lot of different roles in your training as well. How do you manage everything? How do you do your day-to-day job and then fit all this training in as well? There's so much, and there's so much you need to be on top of.
One day at a time. Yes, definitely have to stay on top of things. And my husband is always like, "You're always on your phone." I have to be. I have to stay on top of
my
what's
husband says the
happening.
same thing. Like, his work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely have to stay on top of what's
And
happening.
you do these. I think you're doing blogs at the moment. I've seen the really interesting blogs.
So I'm doing posts every week.
Yes.
Like I posted today on conveyancing actually. Because
So they're like kind of tips and useful
so
tips
different
for,
things about the real estate industry, like
changes.
What are about mortgages, about the tenancy laws, about buying off plan, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is more legal in nature, and sometimes it's just a general kind of tip.
Yeah. No, but it's really useful because I look at that as well. I think a lot of people, I always kind of say that Majdil's just the go-to person for real estate.
Thank you.
No, you honestly, it's really good. And we wanted to also just speak to you about kind of, I know you've told about expats moving here, renting here, but just generally as from your kind of overall experience and, all the things that you've been involved with, even working from the land department, obviously your experience as an attorney, like what advice would you give anyone just from yourself, whether it's from a real estate perspective or your own perspective, what would you give our listeners to take home?
So always, as I said earlier,
advice.
due diligence, due diligence. Do your due diligence, whether you're going to rent, whether you're going to buy, but absolutely have to do it. Even don't depend on other people to do it.
Sure.
Make sure you're doing it on your own. You've got these tools on Dubai Rest, super easy to download the app and just use them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that if you are going to purchase a property, get a will.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, that
So
is
my
very
thing's an advocate for
important.
wills at the
Yes,
moment,
yes.
And lots of the people that come to you are kind of abroad as well. So, we're talking about doing wills here, even if they're not resident, they still can do them.
Exactly. And the fact that now that even Muslims, except
Yes,
for, of course,
the GCs,
Emiratis, can also do it in Abu Dhabi. And that's for properties anywhere in the UAE. It's not limited to Abu Dhabi. So really
Makes a
good
big
idea
difference,
to do this so that you're not leaving your family.
So like you said, with these roadshows, you'll get lots of American Muslims wanting to invest, but at least they know they can do a will as well.
Exactly.
So it's really important.
Super important.
And your husband's also in the real estate
market
he's
as
a
well,
broker.
It's like I always say I'm married to real estate, literally.
So it's like the constant kind of conversation.
Exactly.
And your sister, she does something different, doesn't she?
She was doing real estate in the U.S. and she started actually in in-house at companies doing real estate. So we have
in
my
the
father
family.
was a broker in the U.S. So
It's always been kind of property oriented.
Exactly.
But it's been great having you here, Majdel. Thank you so much for making time because I know you're a busy woman.
Thank you
and
so
you've
much.
got lots going on, but thank you so much. We probably will get you on for like a part 2 next time.
We've got
to kind
so
of
many
get
questions.
into more. We didn't want to kind of bombard you with too many questions, but thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.